Sony, for your own sakes, sell the rights. Hey guys, how is everybody doing? And welcome to my Amazing Spider-Man 2 review. Now, if you have not seen my review on the Amazing Spider-Man, go ahead and do yourself a favor and go ahead and watch that. And we are now at the very end of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, which is kind of a shame to say because I do kind of hope that he got his own trilogy, but he didn't. So we only got to have only two of these movies to talk about. And I talked about it a little bit in my Amazing Spider-Man review of how I have some nostalgia for these two movies because these are movies that I grew up watching because I was a big Spider-Man fan without knowing a lot of the drama or whatever. So these are two movies that I have a lot of nostalgia with. And this one in particular, because I remember I rewatched this one a lot when I was younger as well, which I kind of rewatched all the Spider-Man movies a lot when I was a kid. But apparently I would, even when I didn't like Spider-Man 3, I would watch that one a lot. But this is a movie that I was also really interested to rewatch again because it has been a bit since I rewatched these two movies, and I was curious to see as to what my thoughts were going to be when I was rewatching these movies. Now, I enjoy that first movie a lot. I probably always will, but this was always a movie that I think the one that I was more eager to rewatch out of all these movies was this one because I've seen the Sam Raimi movies all the time. Like, there's never a point in time where I just don't watch those movies, and these are just two movies that I never really rewatch, and so this is a movie I was kind of looking forward to on this review series. And this one has always been known for being said as the worst Spider-Man film. There's a lot of people that don't like this movie. This is the movie that killed Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, like because nobody really liked it. It didn't do financially that well, and so Sony partnered up with Marvel and they decided to bring him to the MCU, and we just never saw Andrew until No Way Home. So this is a movie I was really looking forward to rewatching because of those reasons. And after on this rewatch, I have to say I do think that this movie is a little bit overhated. Now I don't hate the movie, and I will get into its flaws when I do get to that point. However, I find myself enjoying this movie just a little bit. So with that, let me explain why I enjoyed this movie. So starting off with my positives on The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and my first positive is something that I had an issue with the first film. I talked about how the first film had this like dark tone and visually it was dark, but in this one it definitely fixes that. Not is no longer dark tonally or visually because this movie is very bright and visually absolutely stunning. So that is definitely something they improved from the first one, and this actually has this Spider-Man hopeful like feeling. You can have your opinion on this movie all you want, but visually and colorful wise, this is probably the most colorful and visually stunning Spider-Man movie that we have ever gotten. Because some of the moments that really stand out to me is when he's fighting Electro, kind of like in the middle of Times Square in the movie when Electro first shows up. Like that whole sequence, I think is visually amazing, and just like the look of Electro. Now, not extremely comic accurate by any means, but the entire blue look of like the electricity running through his body. I've always really liked the look of that visually. I think that's a very visually stunning character, and just throughout the whole movie, it's extremely colorful. Like when he's swinging around New York, saving citizens or whatever. And you also get a pretty cool moment where there's like a montage of him saving people, similar to to Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. To me, this has a gigantic upgrade from that first film with visually and tonally wise. So I was really happy to see them go in this more hopeful like Spider-Man approach. Now, yes, this movie still does have its dark moments tonally, not visually. It's more dark. It's more dark tonally than it is visually this time because this is a very colorful movie. Like moments like with Electro or the Green Goblin in this or whatever. Like those are moments that have that like dark tone to it that I enjoy, excuse me, that I actually enjoy. But visually, this movie is just extremely colorful, and it has some great colors down. And like each like frame in this movie, no matter what character it is, it seems to have a certain color that represents them. Like Spider-Man just kind of swinging in daylight, that just represents him as a character and who he is. And even in like Electro, there's like a lot of like blue around him to kind of signify him as a character. And even Green Goblin, when he first gets suited up, the whole room is green or whatever. So visually, this movie is very stunning, and that is definitely something they improved from the last one. And that what makes this movie so rewatchable for me is not this is probably the most colorful Spider-Man movie that we have ever gotten so far, and that's something that I really enjoy about the film. It's kind of hard not to talk about this again, even though I already talked about it in the first film. Gwen and Peter in this movie, their whole relationship and dynamic, I think is easily the best part of this entire film. Because, again, I've already discussed this a little bit in my first review of The Amazing Spider-Man, but it's so hard not to talk about these two when they do an amazing job at what they are told to do and how they are and their dynamic throughout this whole movie, where Peter gets back together with Gwen, and obviously there's some holes there that we never got to see get filled with after her dad dying and Peter making the promise that he would stay away from her, which obviously he didn't keep that. And then you see the scenes where he like sees Captain Stacy in his mind every time he's with her, like and together, and says that he loves her and wants to stay with her. He keeps seeing visions and delusional like pictures of her father like looking at him like you made the promise and I want you to stick to it type of thing. And that's just a whole conflict throughout the whole movie, and that goes on throughout the entire film. And it could get easily aggravating and irritating and maybe even annoying, because this is something that goes on throughout the whole movie, where they break up but they still continue to see each other, and they like, well, I want to work this out, I love you or whatever, every complicated relationship, right? And then they get back together, and then bad shit just happens, and then they're like, we probably shouldn't do this. Whatever. That is basically their entire relationship throughout this entire movie, and it could easily get tedious. But when you have Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield, who both have amazing chemistry, and who I believe were still a real life couple at this point as well, their chemistry and their just on-screen dynamic is just so damn good that you just absolutely love watching it, and you just continue to root for these two, and you just really feel the love in the air, I guess you could say, for these two characters. And it's just easily the best part of the entire movie. And I really wish, and I'll get to this later in my negatives, I really wish they made this the true focus of the film, because it is very well known that Sony basically rushed this movie out because they wanted a Sinister Six movie, they wanted a Venom movie, they wanted a trilogy out of Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, but they wanted so many ideas that the way they jam-packed it into this film or whatever to set up future installments possibly. But to me, if Sony basically just stood the fuck out of the way, I honestly feel like the main focus should have been on Gwen and Peter, because their whole dynamic throughout this entire movie is what could have made this movie even better. And especially once Gwen dies at the very end of the movie, that is one of the most emotional and gut-wrenching things that we have ever seen out of a comic book film. And you can easily make the argument that that is the most emotional scene in any Spider-Man film ever, because it's a very emotional scene and it's very gut-wrenching, and Andrew's performance that just solidifies of why he was an amazing actor for Peter and Spider-Man. Like, just that scene alone, and just like even now I'm getting a little choked up. Like, it's a very emotional scene, and that just shows the power that these two had throughout the entire film. And again, I really wish these two were the two focal points and the main focus instead of, the villains. Like, why couldn't you just choose one? But they chose four. So, but yeah, these two are easily the best part about this movie, and they are easily the reason that it's so endlessly rewatchable. And now for my final positive, and a lot of people seem to have an issue with it, but this is something that I've always really enjoyed: the getting the cap off of Peter's parents' storyline, to where we get the payoff of that weird opening from the first movie, which a lot of people thought was pointless, but then they cap it off here. And I've always just really enjoyed it, but yes, it is very generic, and I can agree that the whole reveal at the end, where we find out what happened to Peter's parents, where they died in the plane accident in the beginning, because Peter's dad did something, and the government tried to frame him as this bad guy, that he tried to flee the country because he stole millions of dollars from Oscorp. But then Peter finds the train station and the computer that he sent his final message to, which, how the fuck did he know someone was going to find that? I have no idea. And he basically admits that, one, Peter's DNA is in the spiders, which is probably why it only worked on him when he got bit by a radioactive spider, which it's not how this works, but whatever. And that Oscorp is evil, which, no shit, I think everybody figured that out by now. But, it's generic shit and stupid shit and very predictable shit, but I was really happy to see it because I talked about it in my Amazing Spider-Man review. We've just never seen anything from Peter's parents before in live action outside of these two films. So to see that cap off and to see that continuation, that's just something I really enjoy and it's something that I'm really glad is continued here. Now, yes, is the cap off generic and kind of predictable? Yeah, I can admit that. And I talked about in my other review is that there was a deleted scene that shows that Peter's dad somehow survived the plane crash and he faked his death for years to keep Peter safe. And he comes back and tells him that or whatever while he's at Gwen's tombstone. Which I'm kind of glad they cut it because I don't think that would have worked, and especially since we never got a third film and we never got the end of this trilogy to really understand that, which, I think if it was added now it would be a much bigger issue. But knowing that it's out there, I'm glad it didn't get added because I think that would have just made more confusion for this movie, especially since we didn't get the end of the trilogy. But now moving on to my mixed aspects. And my first mixed aspect is the suit change. Now, I don't hate the suit by any means. I think it's a very good suit and that's the suit everybody thinks of when they think of Andrew Garfield. And a lot of people have even said that's their favorite Spider-Man suit, which I can't agree on that. It is a good suit. I am not saying that's bad. I do think it's a good suit. However, I just don't understand why they changed it other than to kind of brighten up the character and brighten up this movie visually, which is an issue a lot of us had with that first film. But I loved the suit in the first one. I think that's one of the best Spider-Man suits that we have ever gotten. That's one that I've always loved. I love the look of it. It matches these movies' tone and what they're going for, and especially with this Peter. Like I really like that suit, and it's a bummer to see that they changed it. But I understand why they did. It's still a damn good suit, but I just prefer the one in the first one, and I really wish that in another universe we just kept that one. But I think they changed it due to the visual stuff being too dark, which a lot of people said that the suit was just too dark in general, which I don't really understand that. I feel like that suit really added to these movies and what they were going for. Because now when you have a suit like this, it just kind of seems like you're trying to replicate what Toby was wearing in the Raimi trilogy. And I also think the character of Max, aka Electro, I didn't care for how they approached the character of Max in this film, where he's this nobody that's really awkward and fucking weird and weirdly obsessed with Spider-Man for some weird reason.
Celebrating my birthday today? That's why you're here. You remember my birthday.
He's a dork.
He's a dork. Yeah.
And I just didn't like the approach that they did with Max. I love Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx was a very good casting, I feel like, and I feel like what he added to this character was unique, especially when he came back in Spider-Man No Way Home, where he basically kind of redeemed himself. But I don't like the approach of how they did Max, of this really weird, obsessed dude that is not like at all in the comics, because in the comics he's like this Oscorp genius that a lot of people respect, and he just sent a simple science project gone wrong to where a bunch of electricity went to his body and then he changed completely as a person. But they also go in the route of, oh, my hero, the person I looked up to, basically betrayed me and now I want to kill him, which when the fuck haven't we seen this before? The one that comes to my mind is Jim Carrey from Batman Forever when he becomes Riddler. Like, I could just name that. But I don't know. I liked how Electro is the villain in this movie, and I think that's a very unique villain that they added, and I like what they do with him at some moments. But the whole Max stuff and the whole wanting to kill Spider-Man because you felt betrayed, like, this is shit that we've seen before. And just Max in general, he's a fucking weirdo. But now moving on to my negatives. And I really only have two, but they're pretty big negatives. And my first negative is Harry. I fucking hate this version of Harry because not only is the character himself throughout the whole movie just a whiny little bitch and just so fucking unlikable to watch, but just the casting of Harry, I just never liked. And a lot of people seem to like him, so maybe I'm in the minority with that, but the casting choice for him, I don't like it. And the way he gives line deliveries and talks is so fucking weird to where like he's sitting there, he goes, "That is Harry to you now. We are not friends."
Can get you or
Not unless you can bring those spiders back to life.
spiders.
The ones that they destroyed.
And I'm like, why are you talking like this? Like, just the line delivery in general is just fucking weird. And just throughout the whole movie, where we've never met Harry until this fucking movie, which obviously. And when he comes back, his father is dying, which they basically just wasted Norman and the possible Green Goblin with him, but they just wasted him because money and Sony, I guess. And then when he comes back again, first time we've met this character, and his dad is dying, dad is very sick, comes back and learns that this disease that his father died of is genetic, and it starts at the age that Harry starts at, which is very convenient. And so he basically tells his own son that you're gonna die soon. Like, I called you all the way over here for you to watch me die and to tell you you're gonna die in a couple weeks. Father of the year, apparently. And again, I keep saying this, like, this is the first time we've ever seen this character. Like, one, when this is the first time we've met this character, why are you instantly trying to kill him off? Two, he's also been best friends with Peter for years, which obviously that's what these two characters are. They're best friends. And I will admit they do have good chemistry. I think Andrew and the guy that plays Harry in this movie, they have decent chemistry and you feel the friendship there. But we've never heard Peter talk about Harry. We've never seen them have some sort of dynamic until this movie. So there's one flaw there to where you don't always necessarily feel the dynamic outside of the chemistry between him and Andrew. So that's another thing. And throughout the whole movie he's trying to cure himself out of this disease that he supposedly has, which is, comic accurate, and that's where the symbiote suit would usually come in the comics, or maybe even the syndrome thing. I don't know. But and he's trying to cure himself, and he's the head of Oscorp, and they're framing him because they want him to be taken down or whatever for some stupid reasons. And not only is just this casting and this character and this version of Green Goblin just all bad, but he has three different subplots. The ones I just mentioned, he has all of that going on in just this one movie. The first time we meet him, we have all of this shit going on.
Made it myself.
Yeah, mine are homemade too. Come on! Is that all you got? Is that all you got?
That should have been expanded throughout three movies, like Harry in the Sam Raimi trilogy did. That's why James Franco's Harry is so good, and that's when every time I think of Harry, I think of James Franco. That's who I think of when I think of Harry, and that's just also a good comic book adaptation of the character. So that's who I think of. But when you think of this guy, he's just rushed completely. One, he's looking for a disease cure. He's dying. He wants to kill Spider-Man. He becomes Green Goblin. His father's dead. You have all of this shit going on that should have been expanded throughout three movies. And like the first one, you could have had some sort of thing where he comes back and his father is dying. You could have included Norman in that movie, but for some reason you decided to keep him a secret and not add him into this universe until this movie, and then instantly kill him off. And, that could have been in that first Amazing Spider-Man movie. And then in this one, he could have found out about the disease and wanted to cure it. And then in a potential third movie, he could have become Green Goblin. And even his Green Goblin, and I haven't even gotten to that yet, his Green Goblin is terrible. Like, especially compared to Willem Dafoe, who I think is amazing in that role. This version is a fucking joke to me, where he's just fucking this disease weathered version of the character, which is not him by any means, which a lot of people prefer this look over the Power Rangers outfit, which I would rather much look at that Power Rangers outfit than whatever the fuck this thing is.
What the fuck is that?
So, Harry, just throughout this whole movie, is just a gigantic issue as himself. Not only is the character of Harry just very underdeveloped, but then when he becomes Green Goblin, that not only is the version bad, but it's all completely rushed. So there's no breathing room. And how am I supposed to sympathize with the character that I just met and that you're rushing all of this with? And for my final negative, and this is an issue that a lot of people have with this movie, and this is probably why a lot of people don't like this movie. This movie is overstuffed. This movie tries to do too much, and it's completely baffling to me and frustrating to me because Sony decided to reboot this franchise due to Sam Raimi and them overstuffing Spider-Man 3, overstuffing the end of that trilogy. And they couldn't come to an agreement on Spider-Man 4 what to do with that, so they rebooted it. And they just did the same thing. Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 have a lot in common. Not only because they are just disliked by a lot of people, but they also have the same issue of being overstuffed. Spider-Man 3 is overstuffed with the symbiote suit, Venom, Sandman, Green, Harry and shit. All of that stuff is in one movie, and some of that stuff could have been pushed over to another movie. Same thing with this one. Not only do you have a lot of stuff going on in Peter Parker's life, he's dealing with Gwen, he's graduated, he's going to college, he's going through stuff with Aunt May, and has multiple villains to fight. And speaking of the villains to fight, you have like 3 different villains in this movie. You have Paul Giamatti as fucking Rhino, which, what the fuck was that?
You serious?
And then you got the Green Goblin, and then you got Electro. And when I was talking about earlier about how the focal point, the main focus of this film should have just been Peter and Gwen's relationship, that's what I'm talking about right here now. Just choose one of those villains. You don't need Electro and Rhino and Green Goblin. You could have just made Electro the main villain. And then when Gwen dies at the very end, you could have easily had Electro kill her. You could have had Electro kill her to get to Peter in some way. I don't know, but when you overstuffed this movie and overstuffed it with different storylines and characters and plots and villains, it's not a very good movie, and a lot of this stuff could have been moved over. And not only that, but there's also the teaser of Spider-Man 3, of The Amazing Spider-Man 3 that we never got. And that's what makes this movie even worse. Is that you get the guy in the Man in Black, I'm pretty sure he's called, the guy with the top hat and the trench coat, the guy that was teased at the end of the very first movie. And he's trying to set up a Sinister Six. That was something Sony wanted to do. And well, we didn't get that, and then we had to wait another 9 years to get it in Spider-Man No Way Home pretty much. So I don't know. So, and then you tease him, and you have this idea of basically just giving inmates these different outfits, like Paul Giamatti's character, the Rhino suit, or some random prisoner, the Doctor Octopus arms, or giving someone the glider for Green Goblin. Hell, maybe there's some sort of weird serum that you inject into some dude to make him become Sandman. I don't fucking know what your plan was, but I think that alone is stupid. Because when you look at the Sam Raimi trilogy, these weren't just random dudes that just became villains. These were scientists. These were characters that accidentally became these characters. Dr. Otto Octavius, these were arms that he used for a science experiment. Shit went wrong. He lost the inhibitor chip in the back of his neck, and he went fucking nuts. Osborn, he's trying to save his company with this cure or whatever the fuck that it is that he's trying to make for this company so he doesn't get shut down. He tests it on himself. It goes all horribly wrong. He becomes Green Goblin. Like, for you to give it to just random inmates, that's stupid enough as itself. And you were overstuffing this movie with different villains and setting up movies that never even happened. So that's an issue with this movie. When you overstuff it and you put too much in this movie and too much at the audience's faces, they can't focus on one thing. Focus on one thing. Choose one thing. Focus on that. If it does good enough, make Spider-Man 3. And nobody would have had many issues with this movie as a lot of people did. But overall, guys, that's the only issues I have with the movie, but they're big issues. They're obviously big issues, and that's what makes this movie kind of unrewatchable at some moments. However, I do enjoy the movie. The movie is overstuffed. I do have issues with a lot of the decisions and the writing that they did, and it's a lot of Sony's fault for constantly getting involved. They looked at this as a cash grab, and that's all it was for them, and they didn't get the money that they were looking for. Do I enjoy this movie at moments? Yes. But there are also moments where I can understand why some people don't like it. But if you are a fan of that first movie, you might like this, but I would go in with pretty low expectations. I do know a lot of people that like this movie, and I'm glad to hear it, because this is a movie I do enjoy. I don't think this is the worst Spider-Man film I ever watched, but I do understand its faults. But what do you guys think about The Amazing Spider-Man? Have you seen it? The Amazing Spider-Man 2, excuse me. What do you guys think about it? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Is this actually one of your favorite Spider-Man movies? Do you prefer this over the original Amazing Spider-Man? Let me know in the comments below and we shall talk about it. And if you like this video, like it. If you love it, subscribe to the notifications so you will get notified for all of my latest videos. And of course, until my next video, see you all next time.